Greetings there, traveler. You found me in Denver as it would have been some 5 million years ago. Today, I'm here to tell you an epic story, a tale of evil triumphing over good. As of this month, April 2026, the Pearl Cafe, formerly the Mercury Cafe on California Street in downtown Denver, is finally closing for good. This follows a years-long circus of upheaval, torment, threats, all sorts of juicy drama. So, at long last, it can be told, buckle your seatbelts because we're about to go down the wild roller coaster of a mess that is the downfall of the Mercury Cafe. So, what was the Mercury Cafe? For those of you who don't live in Denver, you're probably not aware with just how deeply ingrained a cultural institution this fucking place was. Now, me being Gen Z and a Denverite, I can't say I fully understand it because I didn't have almost 50 years to get used to the place existing. But its original location was on 13th Street, around down in Corona from what I understand. Then it moved to its current location, downtown Denver, California Street. Suffice to say, it was roughly the same institution in either location. Very little changed. The first time I went to the Mercury Cafe, it was 2016, and I tried their hamburger, which wasn't good at all. The bread was really stale, the mustard was like all seeds, the ketchup was watery, the burger was overcooked and tough and chewy. It wasn't very good. But I'm proud that I had the chance to engage in some real Denver cuisine. The desserts were a little bit better. They were like trifles, parfaits, little cakes, things like that. And the Mercury Cafe appealed to a very specific crowd, those being the vegans in Denver. Mercury Cafe was a bit of a visionary in terms of the vegan movement because they were offering good vegan dishes all the way back in the 90s, 80s, when that stuff wasn't even really in vogue. So I think they tapped into a very specific market. In 2020, the Mercury Cafe was sold from its longtime owners to Danny Newman. Now, Danny Newman is, let's just say, a real estate developer, by which I mean he buys properties, holds on to them for a couple of years, and then sells them when it becomes opportune to, when he can sell them for more than he paid for them. He flips properties. Now, flipping properties is a great way to fuck the economy up because it doesn't add any actual value to anything. It just increases the value of an asset that already exists exponentially on and on year after year. This is what Danny Newman's job is. He just buys properties up, holds on to them for a while, and then sells them. The Mercury Cafe had operated for nearly, let's keep in mind here, 50 years, in a volatile market like Denver where barely anything lasts 10 years, let alone half a fucking century. It was sold to Danny Newman, who has no fucking idea how to manage property. He fired the entire wait staff, did away with the menu with the burger on it, the burger that, all things considered, wasn't very good, but which I enjoyed for its kind of kitschy novelty. And then, he fires the entire wait staff. No notice, no severance pay, nothing professional about it. He just says, one day, you're all fired. Hope you enjoy being fired now. Wow, this is great. This is the type of guy that can definitely run a business, certainly knows how to exercise his top status. A real visionary, a real innovator and community developer in Denver, if ever there was one. This is the kind of guy that the city needs. How do I know that he fired the entire wait staff without warning? Well, I was in contact with the Mercury Cafe Union for the duration of its existence, and I sided with the Mercury Cafe Union over management because of fucking course I did. I like unions. I think unions are good, and siding with a union makes sure that you'll be viewed correctly by history. Unions are good, universally. Whether they're Amazon unions, whether they're fucking construction unions, unions are good. They're a good thing.
There was one avenue of information that the bosses couldn't control, the union press. Union reporters dug up the facts, and headline after headline revealed who did have too much money.
But surprisingly, none of my fellow poets, musicians, singers, the people who'd frequented the Mercury Cafe for years, none of them sided with the union. They all sided with management like the cowards they are. They like writing saucy sonnets about cunnilingus, but when it comes time to put their principles forward, stand up against the man, you won't see a single poem about, hey, it's kind of fucked up that the guy who ran this place fucking fired the entire wait staff in one day, isn't it? And then he hires a bunch of security guards to stand around, tell people, oh, you can't go in this store, you can come in this store. Like, people haven't been going in and out of the doors of this place for 50 plus fucking years. As I understand it, I was the only musician to side with the union. And in pictures of the union meeting outside on California Street, you can see me with my bright green hat in tow, standing out there with a sign that says something along the lines of, "Union busting is disgusting." We chanted all night, "Union busting is disgusting." We screamed at the people inside, "Hey, come on out, look at this. This beloved cultural institution is being run through the ground. The entire wait staff has been fired. Don't you find this a bit fucked up?" But nobody from inside came outside. Some people derided us. There is some footage from that night. I'm talking video footage, although I don't have it. It was filmed by some lady who said she was making a documentary. Not sure if that documentary is ever going to come out. But suffice to say, I made my thoughts about Danny Newman very clear. I really laid it on the line. I said people like Danny Newman who destroy beloved, decades-long cultural institutions like the Mercury Cafe aren't going to get any sympathy out of me. But Danny Newman has far less influence, people caring about him online, than I do. I have a bigger fan base than Danny Newman, despite being called one of the most successful, important men in the Denver metro area. I'm more popular than him, and I'm just some guy. I wrote to Danny Newman and I told him that the conditions he was offering the wait staff were completely unacceptable, and unless he hired at least some of them back, he could say ta-ta to me ever fucking going there again. And his response was just that he has it hard, he has it rough, he doesn't have to abide by the standards and practices of any employer, he doesn't have to behave in a professional capacity because he has it hard. Danny Newman, of all people, the multi-fucking millionaire, one of the only multi-fucking millionaires in the Denver metro area, has it really hard compared to the wait staff who he fires, cans out of a job permanently, will probably lose all their houses. He has it harder than all of them. And obviously I didn't buy into this, so I told him, "You're a disease, Danny." And that was basically my way of letting him know, you've failed everyone. Go choke on a chode, there's a cold, dark, empty place waiting for you on the other side. I think this line of communication was very effective. I don't typically mince words with people like Danny Newman. I don't really see any point in doing so. Now fast forward to 2024. The Mercury Cafe is sold and becomes the Pearl, but it's not really sold. What actually happens is, Danny Newman continues to own the building, but he rents it out to these lesbians who brand the building as Denver's first sapphic bar, Denver's first all-day, all-night lesbian hangout spot, the Pearl. Now, as a Denverite who understands that the Mercury fucking Cafe is a beloved cultural institution, it went on for fucking decades. I mean, like, entire generations lived and died under this thing's jurisdiction. I don't give two fucks about the Pearl. But what really happened is, of course, Danny Newman still collects all the fucking rent on this property. He says, "I've sold it. You people didn't like how I fired the entire wait staff in a day, so I've washed my hands clean of this debacle. It's fresh, it's new, it's got a fresh start. It's in the hands of these lesbians now." So the lesbians take all the blame for mismanagement from that point on. If the lesbians happen to be inexperienced or make some kind of slip-up, they take the brunt of the issue. Not Danny Newman, who bought the property knowing full well that he could not maintain it as it had been maintained for 50 plus fucking years. Or 40 plus fucking years, rather. I suppose 45 years. Still, that's, a long fucking time. Danny Newman's calculated move to sell the Mercury Cafe to these lesbians who would rebrand it as the Pearl, Denver's first and only sapphic bar, was incredibly ingenious because he could reframe the narrative. Look, I'm not a shrewd bastard who buys up properties and then fucks them over completely, leaving no options for artists, musicians, poets who have gone there to play the piano, meet for book club, use it as a resource, play shows there. I don't know how to run that sort of thing. But look, I sold it to these lesbians, so now the lesbians have the opportunity to do something with it. Good riddance, but I'll still make money from it. They'll pay me a handsome rent every single month because I'm a fucking landlord and all I do is sit back on my ass and watch that cash flow in. Liquid assets, a fucking river of money straight to my door. So this is what Danny Newman did. And he sold the Mercury Cafe, and it became the Pearl. And those aforementioned poets who enjoyed writing saucy sonnets about cunnilingus wasted away in there for another year or so. Oh, well, we still get to do Friday night open mic poetry. But Wednesday night music open mic, which I fucking liked, was canceled. The instant it changed hands from the Mercury to the Pearl. Wednesday night music open mic, people just forgot that shit existed, even though it was one of the best fucking open mics in the city. It just fucking stopped. That can't happen anymore. But Friday night poetry open mic, because the poets are a much more outspoken group. They're pretentious and full of themselves and full of academics. They get to keep their open mic. Musicians, sorry, fuck you, you're out of luck. Your open mic is done. No more music open mic on Wednesdays. So, I no longer had any fucking reason to go to this place. Now fast forward to 2026, the 1-year anniversary of the Pearl, and it's closing. It's kaput. It's over. Shutting its doors. Because the lesbians who took it on, surprise, surprise, they're young, inexperienced, don't know how to run a business this big, don't know how to do anything with it. Danny Newman didn't give them any information. Danny Newman wants his rent, baby. They have to close up shop. And the year or so of sapphic parties that went down, lusty jello stripping and all, that'll be recorded in history too, but I doubt it'll be remembered as favorably as the decades and decades of poetry and music that went on at the Mercury Cafe. I made a post about this, a somewhat crude painting depicting Danny Newman blowing up the Mercury Cafe with a box of TNT and going, "Yeehaw, I fucked everyone over." This painting wasn't received so well. As I expected, I got some negative feedback from lesbians who said, "Have you ever even been to the Pearl?" Well, no, I haven't been to the Pearl, but as a Denverite, I have been to the Mercury fucking Cafe, and that's the place I cared about. That's a place I figured was worth a shit. If it can't be kept alive, if it has to be strung along as a zombified corpse, why the fuck should I care? As this cadaverous circus. If Lakeside Amusement Park was sold from the Rhoda family tomorrow and it was moved 60 miles like Elitch's was and they had a fucking Cyclone 2, would I give a shit about it? No, it wouldn't be Lakeside anymore. It would be a simulacra of Lakeside. It would be a facsimile. Nobody wants to see a beloved cultural institution propped up in some kind of zombified fucking state. They want to see the genuine, real fucking article. They want to see the real fucking thing. Nobody wants to see the Merc Cafe's lifeless carcass being used for this money laundering scheme of Danny Newman's where he pretends like he doesn't own the building, even though he does, and he's just renting it out. Nobody wants to fucking see this. It's a fucking embarrassment. Of course I don't care about the Pearl. The response of the lesbians was, as I expected, "Well, the Pearl is a great place for lesbian parties. Don't you care? Have you never been there?" Yeah, I've been to the Mercury Cafe. Have you fucking heard of that? I bet you haven't. You probably moved here 6 months ago from Los Angeles. The response goes on, "Oh, well, it was a great place for lesbians." To which I respond, "Well, I'm a cis asexual, so lesbian-specific events don't really mean anything to me. I don't presume to go to lesbian parties because that's culturally appropriative. I don't really have any place there. I respect lesbians a great deal. In fact, I've often said that if I could go to Sappho's Island and live there for the rest of my life, and she insisted that I be castrated to live there just so her and all the rest of her lesbian friends could feel safe, I very much would be castrated. But the difference between Sappho's Island and the Pearl is that Sappho's Island isn't secretly owned by a white heterosexual guy, which really defeats the point of this is the big lesbian hotspot hangout. When you're owned by a white heterosexual guy who looks like fucking Morgan Wallen. That's not really a lesbian type spot then, is it? So I respond, well, there may have been some great lesbian parties held at the Pearl, but it sits on a legacy of exploitation and an entire wait staff's labor rights being violated. Union busting. A complete violation of employee-employer trust. That unsavory a legacy, I don't really go there. And there are plenty of other lesbian bars too. Or at least gay bars, like Charlie's on Colfax. I mean, that place looks fucking gay. They have rainbow lights around the place all fucking day, so I assume it's gay. Say that the Pearl is Denver's only lesbian bar, to say that it's Denver's first lesbian bar or something, displays an incredible ignorance about Denver's long and storied LGBT history. There are so many fucking gay bars that have come and went over the years, with a lot less prestige and clout than the Pearl/Merc, but they don't get a bunch of hype, they don't get tons of big Jell-O-infused shot parties, they're just kind of unassuming. They pop up, stay for a couple years, then they have to shut down. Where's all their fame and glory? Where are the annals and ballads written about them? How come the Pearl gets all the recognition, while the actual bar is owned by fucking lesbians, not just rented to lesbians, but, you know, fucking owned by lesbians? Where does their credit go? Nowhere. 50 plus years of lesbian and gay bars in the Denver metro area, and barely anyone writes or acknowledges about them. It's pretty sick, isn't it? We only give the acknowledgement to the one lesbian/gay bar that's owned by a fucking white heterosexual union buster chud? Alright. I said, you know, I'm a cis asexual, and there are no bars that cater specifically to cis asexuals. I mean, bars where people don't go to hook up, they just go to drink. There isn't anything like that. There are no asexual specific events that cater specifically to me, validate my sexual orientation. There aren't. So, I mean, it's cool you have a lesbian bar and all, but there isn't like a big asexual bar I can go to. And I like the Mercury Cafe because it catered to all groups. I don't want specifically an asexual themed event, but I would like Wednesday night fucking music open mic because it was poppin' and it catered to all demographics and there wasn't any kind of exclusion or anything. It was for all markets, you know? It was very appealing. When I stepped in the doors of the Merc Cafe, I felt like, wow, this is an institution that respects art. Because there was a table up front with a giant pitcher of ice water and little scoops, and you could scoop up a glass of delicious ice water. It was very classy. I felt like, wow, there are resources here. I mean, this is a fucking cool-ass institution. And then when Danny Newman took over, those same pitchers full of ice water were just replaced by generic-ass plastic igloo coolers. And then, eventually, there was just no way to get water. By the end, the security guards would just shuffle you out the door, because that's how Danny Newman runs everything. He just thinks security guards solve everything. Here, you go out this door, and you come in this door. Whereas before, you could go in and come out any fucking door you wanted to. It was very chill and relaxed, but Danny Newman, he makes it like DIA. Oh, you can only go in here, come out there, here's the red line. Bzz. Oh, you failed the laser scanner, you'll have to step back there. Alright, go through again. I said somewhat in jest, where's the asexual bar? You know, there are plenty of lesbian bars. Where's the asexual bar? And the response was, well, the Pearl is great. They can put on an all-asexual event for you. They can put on asexual speed dating or asexual meetup or asexual hangout. And I said, look, I don't need a place to put on an asexual speed dating. Because by definition, asexuals don't even really date. But I liked Wednesday night music open mic. That was great. And if that can't happen, if I can't have that specifically, because it was fucking awesome, it was a great fucking time all around, then the next best thing is for the Merc/Pearl to just close its fucking doors, and for everyone who went there to go somewhere fucking else instead, and let culture evolve in a natural way that makes fucking sense. and to stop having Denver art and culture be dictated by the erratic billionaire business interests of fuckwads like Danny Newman, who has no fucking idea what he's doing and can't even run a fucking business. And I'm sure this is very hard for people to admit, especially all the boomer poets who composed saucy cunnilingus sonnets for years on end and went to the Merc day in and day out. But sometimes things can just die, and maybe that's good because it creates evolution. It helps things evolve in a meaningful way. Maybe the lesbians who owned the Pearl can buy their own fucking business that's a little smaller, a little more modest, not as big as the Merc Cafe with its 2 floors, but a decent size, and hold little lesbian hangouts there, maybe. But really, do you want to buy a business from a union-busting shit like Danny Newman? That's just not intelligent. It's just not the right way to go. Sometimes you just have to let something die, you know? It just happens. Things change, things evolve, and sometimes things have to end. Danny Newman's choice to sell the Mercury Cafe specifically to these lesbians was a very calculated move on his part, because then any criticism of his could be washed away by the billions of gullible people who go there. Oh, but it's such a sapphic bar. It's a gay bar. Wow, if you don't like it, you don't like that lesbians get to have their event. But what I don't like, really, when you get right down to it, is Danny Newman. I don't like Danny Newman, and I think Danny Newman sucks ass. I think he's a rotten cookie. Ultimately, people like Danny Newman, people who believe that they can change the world around them with no real expertise or know-how or anything, these people are vacuous holes of non-meaning. They have no meaning to them. They're anti-meaning. They're like vacant maelstroms of destruction, and they don't care. They don't give a shit about what they do. They fail to take accountability time and time and time again. And at a certain point, as an artist, you have to accept that it's your responsibility to create meaning in your own life from nothing. You can't trust people like Danny Newman to provide that meaning for you through fucking baby raves or whatever the hell it is he holds.
They'll have all these boring pigs, fat businessmen, very serious things, see? And they'll be showing this, see? And meanwhile, like every 2 minutes out of every hour, there'll be us out in the streets or up in the park doing all this thing. Wow, 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 the new America, exciting.
3 years ago, it would be NFT conferences. Hey, do you want to learn how to process Monero? At a certain point, you have to recognize that people like this just don't have your best interest in mind. I hear from people a lot these days as the economy fails about how people like myself have lost the culture war. I don't believe there is a such thing as a culture war, because culture is not a war. You can't define it like a real war. There's no start date, there's no end date, there's no battles, achievements, medals, victories, anything like that. Culture is a continuously living, growing, breathing organism. If you try and stop it, if you try and make it stagnate, it'll only evolve 10 times harder. Culture cannot be stopped. It's an infinite river. You can't dam it up, you can't bottle it, you can't sell it. Culture just fucking happens. That's just how culture is. The fact that I can envision a world where men like Peter Thiel and Sam Altman wriggle around in pools of blood like the worms they are, that means I have an imagination. Really, the idea of such a future with so much potential, where oligarchs wriggle around in pools of blood like the worms they are, speaks to an imagination. It means you can conceive of a world where that kind of thing is possible. And that's half the battle. Once you've done that, you're already halfway there. You're half on the way to a promising future, because you can imagine Sam Altman's grotesque corpse writhing in a pool of blood. This is a book called The Future Now. It's a science fiction anthology edited by Robert Hoskins. And in here there's this story, Silent in Gehenna, by Harlan Ellison. Now, this story is essentially about how any revolutionary activity will be co-opted by the institution and rendered inoffensive. And I've seen lots of memes about this. online, so it's not an idea that's gone away, that radical acts are eventually subsumed into the whole and rendered innocuous. And it follows the character Joe Bob Hickey. Joe Bob Hickey goes around, he attacks and terrorizes various college campuses, and it starts out set in this very by the numbers, I guess, dystopic America where everything is oppressive and it's sad, and you think, Joe Bob Hickey, he's a liberatory figure, he's going to save these people, he's going to make some kind of a difference. But halfway through this story, Harlan Ellison pulls a real humdinger, and he says that Joe Bob Hickey is magically transported to this completely different world where this race of yellow bulb people oppresses a race of blue people that crawl around on all fours. And Joe Bob Hickey is just suspended in a cage above the city of the blue and yellow people, and he screams down on his megaphone all day, "You're being oppressed, you're oppressing them, how dare you, revolutionary act now." No one cares, and he's just fed and lives there in his golden cage for the rest of his life. It's a pretty interesting story. As Harlan Ellison points out in the introduction to the story, all the authors in this anthology wrote little accompanying author's notes to kind of explain what they're about, which I prefer after the stories, but this anthology puts them before the stories, which kind of spoils them almost. Harlan Ellison talks about how any revolutionary activity is pointless because history just repeats itself again and again and again, and eventually revolutionary activity will be rendered completely meaningless, the system will win completely. But at the same time, right after that, Harlan Ellison points out that might just be his own internal bias, because he's prone to such wry cynicism and misanthropy. This is Harlan fucking Ellison we're talking about here. Joe Bob Hickey's pursuit might not be futile after all. I mean, hey, at least the yellow and blue people are entertained by his wild antics, if nothing else, and that's kind of inspirational, isn't it? I say fuck it. You can very much be revolutionary in the year 2026. I don't claim to be a revolutionary, that's my cop-out. I don't claim to be serving any kind of higher purpose. I'm just some guy, and I'm pissed the fuck off about the way my country is going. I think the economy's fucked to shit, and everything I like is dying around me. But I can go out here into nature and lean back and take it all in. And then the problems don't seem so big, when you're out here. It does worry me, though, that my generation is so gullible that we buy into obvious propaganda like, oh, union busting is okay, what Danny Newman did is fine, because this is Denver, I don't even know any of the lesbian bars that existed the previous 50 years, I don't even know any of the notable cultural figures here in Denver, none of them matters, history is being erased as I speak, I'm a stupid, gullible Gen Zer, and if you don't like Danny Newman, then you suck and you're just spreading hatred and negativity. If you call someone out for union busting, you're just spreading hatred and negativity. It does disturb me the way that Danny Newman was able to completely bury and erase all the fucked up, twisted kind of shit he did. I wasn't even an employee of the Mercury Cafe, so I can't even say just how mind-breaking the abuses carried out in his name were, but he really is a sack of shit, just for the record. Let it be known, let the annals of history show, men like Danny Newman fucking sucked. Danny Newman's the Donald Trump of Denver. Choke on a chode, Danny boy. In the 1988 film Red Scorpion, Dolph Lundgren portrays a Russian special operative under the jurisdiction of the Soviet Union at the time, a Spetsnaz, who goes into some African country determined to take out a ruthless warlord, only to find that the warlord is this benevolent Nelson Mandela-type figure, and the Soviets and Czechs and Cubans are the actual oppressors. So Dolph Lundgren takes a big gun, and he takes out the fucking Ruskies, and he takes out the fucking Cubans and Czechs, and he sides with the Africans. Wow, you're an oppressed people, and I'm here to save you.
You lied to me, General.
I sent you on a mission to hate and oppress people.
But you didn't tell me who the oppressors were.
Red Scorpion is a very carefully crafted piece of propaganda that doesn't frame the conflict of the Cold War as between the Soviets and Americans, which movies like Red Dawn do, and which was considered cliché by the time Red Scorpion came out. Instead, it shows the ruthless Soviet Empire oppressing these poor African villagers, and by golly, don't you want to see the Africans liberated? Such an oppressed people. Don't you want to see them get liberty and justice and drive the Soviet invaders out? These horrible Cubans who were almost inhuman, right? Red Scorpion was a piece of propaganda that was funded explicitly by the guy who the Kevin Spacey movie All the Money in the World is based off of. He was an incredibly corrupt corporate lobbyist and propagandist who just fucking hated communism. And it really is shown in Red Scorpion if you stop to consider it. The more you consider, Dolph Lundgren's superiors' behaviors don't really make any sense. They're cartoonishly evil. They're basically the caricature of the blue-haired SJW warrior that goes around in the late 2010s with movements like Gamergate. They don't really carry any substance. Is this really how a Soviet official would behave? They just drop biological weapons onto some random African village willy-nilly, and then the Cuban goes into Dolph Lundgren's interrogation cell, takes out some needles, starts sticking them through Dolph Lundgren's fat muscles like he's a rack of beef. Is this really how the Soviet Union operated? Or is it really just full of shit? You might think, well, you know, it's about an oppressed African village, and these people are sad, and they're being tormented by the Soviet fucking Union. And you might think this movie has more nuance than your average Cold War propaganda. But then you realize that the movie was produced with the cooperation of the South African government, which was conducting apartheid at the time. That the film was boycotted. People didn't want to go see it because it's fucked up to cooperate with the South African government who facilitate apartheid. Especially if you're making a movie that's ostensibly about these oppressed fucking African people under the jurisdiction of some maniac white empire, the Soviet Union, but in actuality it's the fucking South Africans, one of whom was probably a very young Elon Musk. Red Scorpion is a very pernicious little piece of propaganda that's able to make you sympathize with the people being oppressed by the fictional Soviet Union. And conveniently, America just isn't in the picture at all, even though in this case, I'm sure the American empire would be in Africa blowing twice as many tanks and 5 times as much bioweapons as the Soviet Union can bother to muster. The Americans are conspicuously absent in Red Scorpion. Just one solemn American journalist who's presented as a bit of a buffoon, a bit ignorant, but at the end of the day, he's on the right side of everything. He's on the right side of history. These Soviet Union, they're evil. They're barbarians. We Americans, we know what to do. Stick with us and you'll get through life. Everything will be taken care of for you. Don't worry about it. Very good and effective propaganda, but even people of the time didn't fall for it, because when you cooperate with the South African government, who's actively committing apartheid, mind you, really, what do you fucking expect? The movie's an embarrassment. But it's a very effective piece of propaganda, and it shows how you can reframe narratives by pretending like you're on the progressive side, when really you're on the regressive side, and you just want to build more fucking casinos in Atlantic City. I'm going to end this video with a little quote from an essay by Ursula K. Le Guin, and this from, again, The Future Now by Robert Hoskins, and the essay in question is The Stalin in the Soul. It opens the collection up. It's nonfiction as opposed to the rest of the collection, which is speculative fiction. But Ursula K. Le Guin says, despite all disclaimers, it is only when science asks why instead of simply describing how that it becomes more than technology. When it asks why, it discovers relativity. When it only shows how, it invents the atomic bomb, and then puts its hands over its eyes and says, my God, what have I done? When art shows only how and what, it is trivial entertainment, whether optimistic or despairing. When it asks why, it rises from mere emotional response to real statement, and to intelligent ethical choice. It becomes not a passive reflection, but an act. and that is when all the censors of the governments and of the marketplace become afraid of it. But our censors are not just the publishers and editors and distributors and publicists and book clubs and syndicated reviewers. They are the writers and the readers. They are you and me. We censor ourselves. We writers fail to write seriously because we're afraid for good cause that it won't sell. And as readers, we fail to discriminate. We accept passively what is for sale in the marketplace. We buy it, read it, and forget it. We are mere viewers and consumers, not readers at all. Reading is not a passive reaction, but an action involving the mind, the emotions, and the will. To accept trashy books because they are bestsellers is the same thing as accepting adulterated food, ill-made machines, corrupt government, and military and corporate tyranny, and praising them, and calling them the American way of life or the American dream. It is a betrayal of reality. Every betrayal, every lie accepted, leads to the next betrayal and the next lie. Well, that's the sordid story of the Mercury Cafe's fall from grace in a nutshell. It's a very sad story, but hopefully it serves as a cautionary tale about when a beloved cultural institution just gets too big for its britches, its reputation outsells itself, and then it gets chalked off to some wheeler-deal real estate bullshit hype man like Danny Newman, who has no idea what the fuck is going on and has rocks for brains, and believes in the outdated notion that owning a vast real estate empire somehow makes you respected or important, or people give a shit about you, like it's still 1910 and it's fucking Mr. Monopoly moving around the board and buying up Park Place and Boardwalk, fucking St. Chester's Avenue. Nobody gives a shit anymore. Nobody gives a shit if you own Boardwalk, Park Place, Wahoo Avenue. Nobody cares. It doesn't mean anything. You can only demonstrate who you are through your actions. And will I miss the Mercury Cafe? Fuck yes, I will. But I'm also fairly confident that some other place that's better run will step up to continue its legacy and keep Denver art and Denver culture going for as long as I'm alive. I'll outlive men like Peter Thiel and Sam Altman. I'm younger and hungrier than they are, and they'll go the way of the fucking dinosaur. And culture will evolve and change in the continuous ribbon it is, as it should. Same as it ever was. I've been Nick Cicada. Hopefully you've learned something useful from this video. If you'd like to buy some of my comics, which are Denver's best, then write to Nicholas Cicada, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1, Denver, Colorado, 80206, for a free catalog of all our titles. Like, subscribe, comment, and all that jazz for more spectacular Denver-themed content in the future. And I'll see you in the next one. Also, I highly recommend The Future Now, edited by Robert Hoskins. It's very good. Very good little collection of some of the greatest science fiction writers of all time, writing about the future. Alright, well, I've got a couple hours left in this nature preserve, and I intend to make the most of them. So I'm going to walk down the trails a bit. Thanks for stopping by today, traveler. And I'll be off. A merry day to you, a Denver day to you. So say we all, until the end of time, and so it goes.